Hey, it's Dr. Gayla Gorman. I'm a licensed acupuncturist, naturopath, and author. In my clinic, I help a lot of patients with digestive issues. It's very common for people with autoimmune conditions and really a chronic problem for millions of people because our digestive systems were not designed to eliminate a lot of the toxins that we're forced to deal with in the world we live in today. A lot of people ask me about diets, restrictive diets, as a way to address their digestive issues. It's really common to be eating gluten-free or dairy-free. Generally speaking, eliminating gluten and dairy is probably good for most of us. But I will say that I found that it wasn't really the gluten that was the problem for me. It was the yeast. I would not have known that without doing some additional investigative work. We had a chef that was making homemade gluten-free bread for us, and it was just tearing me up. I asked her after I got my tests back about the yeast, and she said that they actually put 2 to 3 times the yeast in gluten-free bread to try to make up for the gluten, to make it fluffy. So as you can see, I was making matters worse turning to gluten-free bread. The answer really was no bread, but that's not fun. Who wants a sandwich that isn't on bread? Anyway, the whole diet idea, the elimination idea, really needs to be thought through. And just know that everybody might tell you this is the answer, but the answer is unique to you. What works for another person won't necessarily work for you. When we start to consider our options for diets, I'm always reminded of a doctor that I bought some meditation CDs from many years ago. Her philosophy was that any diet will work as long as we're committed to it for an extended period of time. That extended period of time is at least 6 weeks, but probably longer than that to really clean things out of our system. So that being said, any diet will most likely be helpful. Let's talk first about the keto diet because that's the flavor of the month right now. Keto basically is moderate protein, low carb, and high fat. For those of us with digestive issues, a high fat diet can be really problematic. For me, it's nearly impossible to eat that much fat. I never make my macros. So every day I feel like a big failure. So if you're going to try to adopt the keto diet, you need to make sure that's the diet that's going to best suit you and what you're trying to accomplish. You want to make sure that your liver and gallbladder are healthy and you don't have an issue there. The next flavor of the month is low carb. This actually isn't the flavor of the month because it's been popular for many years due to Dr. Atkins. But the keto diet sort of was a launch off of the low carb diet. What I find with the low carb diet is that a lot of people eat too much meat and other things as a substitute. Low carb snacks are still processed fake food. Low carb would be fantastic if you were eating whole foods, naturally low in carbs, but that doesn't tend to be what people do. So low carb ends up creating a long-term problem. Once your body is not used to eating carbs, if you go back to eating carbs, it can be really a problem. The next diet I want to talk to you about today is carnivore. The low carb diet people tend to turn to carnivore. This actually is probably the one that's best for people with GI tract issues. Carnivore tends to have the least things that irritate the digestive tract. Carnivore isn't great long term, but it can really help to reset your digestive tract and eliminate a lot of the things that are causing irritation. If you're eating high quality protein with good healthy fat, carnivore can be a diet that would make sense for a lot of people with digestive issues. Next is the Whole30 diet. This was made popular a few years ago, and it's a really hard diet in my opinion. There's actually a whole book focused on Whole30, so if you're interested in going this direction, I suggest you pick up the book. It's nearly impossible to eat out at restaurants doing Whole30. The main reason for that is because it requires you to eliminate all grains and anything that's a grain-like substance. More importantly, though, you have to eliminate all the bad fats. So when you eliminate everything but olive oil, avocado oil, maybe a little grass-fed butter, it makes eating out nearly impossible. Even the grass-fed butter can be a problem because all dairy is eliminated. I did the Whole30 diet quite a few years ago, and it really was fantastic. I felt great. I ate at home almost every single meal. It was just more trouble than it was worth to eat out. I think I ate out once or twice in the entire 30 days, and even that was kind of a bust. The idea with the Whole30 diet is that you're going to take all of these offensive things out of your digestive tract. After your digestive tract gets kind of cleaned out, you're going to reintroduce them one by one and determine what was causing the issue. So this is really time-consuming and a bit of hit or miss. One of the things that I found was that jalapeno peppers, which a lot of restaurants put in guacamole, which is something that I love, really irritated my digestive tract to the point where I would break out in hives on my arms and legs. I think it's interesting because on an ongoing basis, I eat some peppers here and there, and I don't have that problem. But that's basically because my body has gotten used to being irritated on an ongoing basis. So now that I know that these things are irritating my digestive tract, I also know that they're contributing to my other issues related to digestion and elimination. So I try to be careful and not eat as much of any substance that I know is causing an issue. Whole30, as I mentioned, is a really challenging restrictive diet, but any type of restrictive diet is going to have positive effects in the short term, but not really sustainable long term. You've got to find some way of eating, of consuming your fuel that's going to work for you long term and also bring you joy. We get a lot of joy out of sharing meals and just eating in general. It's part of our human ritual. So one of the things I use in our clinic is specialty lab tests that will help to identify what's actually causing the problem. This makes things much easier because we can eliminate the things that are causing the problem and work to revolve our diet around things that aren't irritating to us. I mentioned that I found that yeast was a bigger problem than gluten for me. There were several other things from the test results that I found kind of surprising. Things that I thought were a problem really weren't that much of a problem. And then things that I had no idea were a problem turned out to be really the culprit. If you're interested in learning more about the lab tests, you do have to be an established patient for us in order for us to run them for you. But you can reach out and we'll get you some information about how that process works. It is possible to establish a patient relationship without having to be here locally or come into the practice. So if that's not an avenue that you want to pursue, you can poke around a little. We wrote a blog post that has a few more diets in it with a little bit more information. You can look for that. You can also poke around, do some investigative work yourself, and see if you can get to the bottom of what's really causing your digestive issues. We look forward to seeing you around the community.